The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our 105th meeting. And we're beginning our 106th, and this is our academic reading number 46. As you know, we are passing through or working through the book in its entirety, just as we are doing with the Destiny of the Nations for the soul work that we're doing on in a broadcast on Saturday, and we're doing the reappearance of the Christ, reading through that on the reappearance of the Christ meditation. Of course, those two are broadcasts, but still, you know, it's always good to keep the actual books in mind and to refresh ourselves on the important points, because, you know, I don't know if you're like me, but after a certain point, years and years and years of reading the books, it might trail off a little bit. But I have forced myself into a situation where I have to constantly read the books, and always something new is coming up, and always something along the line of a necessary assimilation is dawning upon me. So I would just say, learning what I've learned about the whole thing, don't slack off on your reading. Continue every day your study. The Tibetan was asking for about an hour of study every day. Can you manage that? That would be very good if it were possible. Well, let's just have a little alignment here before we get into the matter. And our purpose is to constitute ourselves as a little group on the periphery of Master DK's ashram, and to work with clarifying the lower 18 subplanes, especially the planes of glamour, the subplanes of glamour, which are the astral subplanes. And but this does not exclude work with illusion in the lower mind and work with Maya on the higher 4 subplanes of the etheric physical plane. So really there is a general kind of clearing in a place, in an area, which can contribute to the distortion of the truth in various ways. And the more work we do on this, the clearer our own lives will become, and the more subject we will be to the truth as the soul registers it. And with persistence, we will have an effect upon our environment in these times which are beset by many kinds of glamour. This glamour of egotism, well, they're all related, aren't they? But this glamour of egotism being one of the most difficult. And it's all based on mistaken identity and believing that what we register as the self really is the self. It's really based upon an inability to take into consideration the pairs of opposites, essentially soul and personality at this point. And it comes when we still live within the hall of ignorance, where the majority of our time in the unfolding of the Egoic Lotus is spent, and have not made our way really in any significant manner into the hall of learning, where the pairs of opposites finally show themselves for what they are. And the higher of the pairs of opposites, which in this case is the soul, takes its, becomes our goal. We find many prominent people, maybe they've somewhat made their way out of the hall of ignorance, but they have not entered yet the place of aspiration. They've only entered the place of self-glorification. And that is really what egotism is. It's a mistaken self-glorification, and even the self that is chosen to glorify is not the true self. So we see this constantly, and there's a battle going on in the various nations between the good of the nation, which would be a selfless approach, and the perceived good of the individual, which is a selfish approach and very Martian in a certain respect. That really has to be overcome, and I think in the age of Aquarius, under the influence of the Christ and his hierarchy, it will be overcome. But we are still in this transition phase, and it's very difficult for people to think in terms of the larger whole, the welfare of the larger whole, the welfare of humanity, the welfare of the kingdoms as a whole, the welfare of the planet. It's somehow difficult for many to think this way, but a lot of the younger people are coming in thinking this way. And we have to give the thought substance to back up their correct orientation. So we'll constitute ourselves the serving group that works to clarify these lower subplanes. All of which are placed within an area of the divine structure, which cosmically is not a principle. You know how we're told to take our eyes off the little personal self and to not worry so much about the physical form, because it is not a principle? Well, thus it is cosmically with the lower 18 or 21 subplanes. So, but we have to work in that area, because for us, those areas are principled when it comes to the life of man. So I'd just like to briefly welcome you here to do this work. Annette, Ariel, Barbara, Catherine, Chris, George, Helen, Karen Gritz and Karen Johansson, both from the West Coast. Okay, you're still awake. Welcome. Lone, Mariana, Marissa, Mariut, Martha, Risto, Tiu, Veronique, and Veronica. Welcome, everybody, and thank you to Michael Stacy over here on the right-hand side, who is keeping us on the track. Now, let's continue with our reading and take notes as you go along. You know, probably a lot of you know this, but if you have a PC, and you use the Alt button and the Tab button together. In other words, press down on the Alt, and then every time you want to change a screen, press on the Tab button. You'll be able to move quickly from one screen to another. Give you an idea. See there? And I can choose whatever I want. All I have to do is move that along, and I can choose. Right now, my finger is pressing the Tab button. Now, a lot of people don't know that, just the way they don't know that by pressing the Windows, I don't know what that's called. It looks like a window. Press the window and the letter M, and you go right back to that screen, to the original screen. That is how it can work. So there's no reason not to know a few of these little things that helps you take notes faster. You can set up a little Word document, and then you can switch to it if you have something you want to remind yourself of, and then you can switch back. Or you can just use a pen and paper to jot things down, but the memory may not hold something that appeals to your interests. And so it's good to make a note. All right, now let's do a little work here. The problem of Maya, remember, it's an etheric condition largely, in the way we're considering it. The problem with Maya is complicated by the fact that upon the physical plane, as upon the astral plane, though this is as yet little realized, you have a battle of the pair of opposites. Now, when we think of the pair of opposites, we think of two contending forces or energies, and we oftentimes think of soul and personality, and we are correct in thinking that soul and personality are the usually referenced pair of opposites. There are other pair of opposites, both lower and higher. We might say that the monad triad opposes the soul-infused personality, and that's kind of a pair of opposites in a way, and that the etheric nature itself is a kind of opposite to the dense physical aspect. As a matter of fact, if you look at the map, let's see if I can find this map in a way that will be useful. This map shows you essentially that the higher four subplanes are superior to the lower three, and right now I'm pointing to the astral plane, and that the chakras, or these vortices of force descending from the very highest level, are found on the higher four, and so the higher four subplanes of the astral plane are in a way energetically superior to the lower three and form kind of a pair of opposites. Things are a little different on the mental plane, but because the Egoic Lotus does not include the fourth subplane, and yet we can look at a pair of opposites between what we call the higher mind and the lower mind. And if this were fully filled out diagram, which DK has not really done, but he does tell us that these vortices of force are present on the higher planes, then we would have, I think, the superior four with chakras, and the lower three, superior four, lower three, and so forth, so forth. So the idea of contending forces which wrestle with each other, are always going to be found. And we, at the level that we work, we pretty well sum it up as the battle between the soul and the personality, but in the section we're now considering, something else will be brought to our attention. So there is, upon the physical plane, a battle between the pairs of opposites, etheric and dense physical. These are of a different nature in some respects to those found upon the astral plane. On the physical plane, and by that I mean the etheric levels of the physical plane, whereon the deceptive power of Maya is experienced, there is a meeting of the forces of the subjective world of the personality and the ancient energies of matter itself, the ancient fires, as they are called when we're working with the final rules in a treatise on white magic. The ancient energies, where so much destruction can occur if the animated, etherically energized thought form which must precipitate is not handled in the right way as it enters upon the dense physical plane. So these are brought over, these ancient energies, as latent seeds from the previous, I think, from the previous major solar system. And of course, maybe the very first solar system, which was not a sacred solar system and was 5 solar systems ago, had this particular problem to work out, and probably progress could not occur beyond the systemic etheric physical plane. And then we added new possibilities with the appearance of each solar system until we arrived at the first major solar system, which was the one right before our present solar system. Our present solar system is the second major and the 5th in a series. So there you see again the numbers 2 and 5 going together. Let's see. Yes, and so often when DK uses the word physical, and he's referring to the planets in our solar system, he really includes the etheric levels and actually considers them the true physical level. The rest is just an automatic gathering of a congestion of matter from a previous solar system. Okay, but there's going to be a constant conflict between the tendencies of some of these energies. And that conflict goes on right in our own nature. Now, maybe one of the most conflicted of the now masters or chohans was the becoming initiate Paul, that in Christianity we call Saint Paul. He was making, excuse me, his transition from Saul to Paul, and he was always fighting with himself. He was a Scorpio, we are told. It's a very strong energy in his nature, and through Scorpio, the major 4th ray energy comes in its combative, we might say, in its combative mode. And, you know, it's famous what he said, paraphrasing, you know, that which I would do, I do not do. That which I would not do, I do. O wretched man that I am, who can save me from the body of this death? So conflict with duality was one of the major features of his life. But he made, you know, like Milarepa, he made tremendous progress. I think if I assess what happened for him, he moved from, I think, being an initiate, a fanatical initiate of the 2nd degree, onto the 4th degree, when he lost his life in Rome later by a deliberate choice. Now I'm going to, oh, this is so interesting too, but I'm going to turn to esoteric astrology here, and I'm going to go to page 333, and you will see what it says about Scorpio, which is, by the way, from a higher perspective, it is humanity's major sign, because the fourth creative hierarchy, which we are as monads, is ruled by Scorpio. So, you know, in the early days, unity of selfishness, the monster, you know, your typical horror flick is right here. Then later, for advanced man, and this is maybe where we find ourselves, advanced man, the aspirant, conflict with duality, the fighter. And this is, we always have to pass through a fight before peace is possible. Then later, the higher unity comes about, and you have the true disciple and the initiate found as the unity is achieved and a degree of harmony is achieved. Scorpio is the sign which, ruled by Mercury, finally gives us that Buddhic harmony. Okay, that's page 333 of esoteric astrology. Okay, so let's go on here. And by the way, the non-evolutionary mantra of Scorpio you're probably familiar with: let Maya flourish and deception rule. Now, this is before a human being gets a hold of himself, you know, and starts directing the life from the higher sources. Maya will flourish, and deception, or the blinding of the consciousness to truth, will rule. Okay. Now we go on. It might perhaps be clearer to your perception if I worded the truth about Maya as follows. The latent impulses of the personality life, you know, they are stored in the lunar vehicles. When, and this is the important part, when divorced from and not under soul control, in other words, when the elemental life is ruling and there is no soul control, so we have a rather low form of impulse, not controlled by the soul, and it's in the early days. These latent impulses are blended with the pranic fluids within the periphery of the personality sphere of influence, and then become potent, directed streams of force, seeking emergence into physical manifestation through the medium of the physical body. And basically, you don't find very high expressions when this is the case. They become blended with the pranic fluids, and they express in a low manner through the chakras. The chakras, like any planet, are capable of high, medium, or low types of expression according to the degree of evolution or unfoldment of the chakra. Now, in the early days, the chakras simply blend with the available prana and express that which is within the lunar lords of the personality, which is a type of energy which has not been redeemed. And we have to learn how to control these elemental lives from a higher position. So they blend these impulses within the lunar lords, blend with the pranic fluids which are within the periphery of our personality, and then they express potently in a rather low and negative way seeking emergence into the physical manifestation through our 7 centers, but really at first more through the lower chakras, because the higher chakras develop later than the lower chakras. These forces or impulses, and I'm going to just call them, lunar, elemental, plus the prana available, constitute the etheric body of the undeveloped and frequently of the average man. The average man is, of course, more advanced than the undeveloped man. It will be apparent, therefore, how much the undeveloped man is the victim of mass energy of a low kind. This is where the crowd consciousness, or what do they call it? It had mass consciousness. This is where the mass consciousness comes from. So a victim of mass energy of a low kind, for the etheric body is responsive to and draws its energy from a type of general environing prana, not from the higher sources which can guide the etheric body and hence the physical body in the correct manner. Draws its energy from a type of general environing prana until such a time as there is a definite direction and a higher control. Because, at first there's nothing but impulse, no definite direction. According to the way the energy moves, so you move too. And in esoteric astrology, it tells us that until Saturn takes over, we are driven up and down the land. I think I may have read that for you before. The idea of being driven up and down the land until we finally consciously gain control. So we just follow our impulses, our habit patterns, and in an undirected manner. So until there is definite direction and a higher control, there is a drawing in of that general environing prana. And, if we read from the Light of the Soul, we will see that there are 5 different types of prana. I can't name them all, apana, upana, and all of that, that are meant to direct and guide the different parts of the mechanism. But until we can consciously deal with those pranas, we are at the mercy of some rather low impulses which are inherent in our as yet unredeemed lunar form. And hence we would get what DK calls Maya at times, that unthinking emotional mess. That's what he calls it. Okay. Until such a time as there is a definite direction and a higher control, either through oriented aspiration and mental discipline, applying the disciplines to yourself, or later as the result of soul conditioning, to use the psychological phrase. I mean, there comes a time when we just get tired of all the chaos and we begin to have a vision of something higher, and we orient our desire life to touch the higher realms of desire impulse, and we begin to apply the will through the lower mind. And then there can be regulation within the etheric body. It's somehow very important that the 7th ray be applied to the etheric body to regulate the life of the outer man. So it's a task, and in the old days, it was the basis of the Lemurian initiation. In Lemuria, those who could take an initiation basically took the first initiation, and it was a contest between the etheric body and the ancient fires, which had their own tendencies. And when the dense physical body could be controlled consciously by the etheric body. This was initiation number 1, and we do repeat that as we begin to apply the physical disciplines as we approach the first initiation in our individual lives and in the period immediately following. Then we get going on the astral emotional regulation and discipline. This etheric energy, focused in an individual etheric body, passes through 2 stages prior to the stage of discipleship. Passes through 2 stages. Okay, so I assume that we all think of ourselves largely, as disciples or aspirants on the verge of really becoming a true disciple with true mental discipline. Okay, the first stage. The stage wherein it assimilates the second force to which I referred, the force latent in the dense physical body, the energy of atomic substance, thus producing a definite fusing and blending. So the ambient ethers and the tendencies of the ancient fires blend together. This is an early stage. This causes the animal nature to conform entirely, and by this I suppose we mean essentially the dense physical body. This causes the animal nature to conform entirely to the inner impulses emanating from the world of prana, where the entirely undeveloped man is concerned, or from the lower astral, where the more developed or average man is concerned. So the undeveloped man, who is not yet the average man, is impelled by the direction of the pranas before the period of regulation, and the average man is impelled or compelled even by the lower astral tendencies. Now, to give you an idea of why this is undesirable, the fifth and the sixth and the fifth subplane of the astral plane are meant to be areas with which the human being in the present time has nothing to do. We have all kinds of undesirable phenomena occurring on the very lowest subplane of the astral plane, and we are told that this is where the so-called hell of the average believer can be found. And the sixth subplane, from numbering from the top, is not much better. Then there is a transition which begins to occur as mind is employed for the fifth subplane, and then the higher 4 subplanes where we find astral chakras are where we can expect there will be some higher type of direction with regard to desire. We will not seek out the very lowest desires. So he says average man is, what does he say? Subject to impulses from the lower astral. Well, what does he mean by lower astral? If it is the 6th and 7th subplanes, it's really undesirable. The 5th subplane is transitional. The 4th subplane gives us an area on which the lowest or lower astral chakras are found, and it can guide average man, I would guess. Until, of course, we are, here is the map. Well, actually, what you can find? You can find this map in a treatise on cosmic fire. Let's see if I can go there. The treatise on cosmic fire, page 188. And basically what we've got here, he leaves out the qualities of the sixth and seventh, the lowest subplanes. They would be found over here. Then the sense of hearing begins to come in, and then the sense of touch, then the sense of vision. We can be guided by these before we have the higher type of astral tendencies like imagination and emotional idealism. So always the lower two subplanes are left out of the picture when dealing with the astral plane, and even when dealing with the dense physical plane. The watery subplane and the dense subplane are left out of the picture, and a place of joining can occur with the fifth subplane, and we know how the molecules of air from our studies of science are involved in the hearing process. Okay. Now, just a little bit more here. So that's the beginning, 2 stages prior to discipleship. And I think I want to make that a little bigger so that we really get the idea. And what we have here is this counts. This is applied to the undeveloped man, and the well, it says average man, but you know, or lower average, I would say. All right, now we go on. The moment, however, that an inner orientation towards the world of higher values takes place, now, you know, people like ourselves, we are oriented in the way that it discusses here, because, you know, through satiety, we just have enough of the kind of life lived subject to the lower impulses, because after all, we are the spirit and we recognize our bondage. And there's a time at which we might say the prodigal son revolts against his present condition. So the moment that an inner orientation towards the world of higher values takes place, then the etheric or vital force is brought into conflict with the lowest aspect of man. It no longer just simply serves the lower habits, the lower etheric impulses, and the tendencies of the ancient fires. Now there's a conflict because within the etheric body are higher types of energies coming from the higher emotional plane, and also from the mental plane, maybe even something from the soul plane. So the moment this reorientation takes place, and some people, you know, look at that as kind of a reversal of the wheel of evolution. We talk about that all the time in astrology. It means the energies are now headed in a different direction. They are headed upwards in the system rather than passing through the upward, the higher chakras, and only energizing the lower chakras. That's what it means to reverse the wheel, a change of direction of etheric flows and maybe astral flows in the energy system of man. So the moment that happens, the etheric or vital force is brought into conflict with the lowest aspect of man, the dense physical body, and the battle of the lower pairs of opposites takes place. Now, he's going to tell us this, that this was really active in the First World War. The Second World War had not yet occurred when this was written, okay? But a lot of people passed through a replay of the ancient Lemurian initiation as they were passing through the First World War. It's kind of interesting. You would say, well, the body wants to run away to preserve itself. and so does the lower desire want to retreat. But the higher aspect of the astral plane and the plane of mind involved says, no, this is not right. Hold your ground. And therefore the tendency of the body, when animated by the lower ethers, is stopped, and a new direction takes place, and the body does not run. I had a friend who had a dog, kind of a German Shepherd, and this dog loved to chase rabbits. But the woman had trained the dog so that when a rabbit appeared, the dog had to hold its ground. She would give the name of the dog, and in a sort of a stern voice, and the dog, although the impulse was there to chase the rabbit, it had to discipline itself, probably to please the master, and hold its ground. Well, you know, probably some of us have gone through similar circumstances where we know something we are inclining to do is not right, and a higher energy is there and is in conflict with this lower impulse, and we hold our ground and do not pursue what otherwise under impulse we would have pursued. It is interesting to note that it is during this stage, this earlier stage, I suppose, before the soul really takes a grip, under Vulcan, you know, the grip of the soul is under the fist of Vulcan, the, you know, spiritual will as it applies to self-discipline. It is interesting to note that it is during this stage that the emphasis is laid upon physical disciplines, upon such controlling factors as total abstinence, celibacy, vegetarianism, and upon physical hygiene and physical exercise. I mean, you know, a certain amount of that is really required, but you do see people passing through obsession with these disciplines, and they consider it to be a very high form of spirituality. Well, it is foundational, but it's certainly not the highest thing. DK said, well, if people would pay as much attention to achieving emotional, he called it emotional loveliness, as they do to their physical disciplines, then things would be much better with humanity. So it's possible to get stuck there in an earlier sort of Lemurian stage of the initiatory process and not move on. Really, you know, our main job now is not so much to control the physical body, you know, a reasonable amount of that is needed, of course, but it is the relationship between the emotions and the soul, between the desires and the soul. Soul desires versus personality desires. This is the area. And for people like ourselves, we're moving more and more into the mental control, where the higher mind gains control over the lower mind and illusion is overcome. So a lot of people, you know, they get into this, and maybe when they're younger and later they see that it's part of the picture and not the whole thing. But through these disciplines, as valuable as they may be, if not overly prolonged, the control of the life of matter, the lowest expression of the third aspect of divinity, can be offset, and then man is set free for the true battle. The man is set free for the true battle of the pairs of opposites, and that is occurring between soul and personality as fought out on the astral plane. And we have the example, every one of us is Arjuna, the warrior, and every one of us has Krishna, the charioteer, who is the soul and tries to guide us correctly. And then we have to make a decision about which side we will fight upon and where we will send our forces. Remember that ancient India, well, even modern India, is ruled in the personality by the fourth ray. And so it is a land that has seen tremendous conflict. And the greatest of all the battles, which has distinguished itself in the minds of many spiritually inclined people, is the battle of Kurukshetra, which is occurring in every individual, every group, every nation, and within humanity itself, humanity being ruled by the fourth ray, largely. So after we work with these physical disciplines and can at least count on a mechanism which does not require too much attention, we are overcoming Maya, and then we are set free for the true battle of the pairs of opposites. This second battle is the true Kurukshetra, and is fought out in the astral nature between the pairs of opposites which are distinctive of our solar system, and we live in an astral Buddhic solar system, and we are involved with the control of the desires and the emotions by the soul. You know how it goes? This gives a hint. The monadic ray will condition, when the time is right, the lower mind. The ray of the soul will condition the tendencies of the astral body and the ray of the astral body. They can be different rays, but they condition, okay? And it's the personality per se as a united elemental which conditions the dense physical body. So we're moving up from an area where the personality has to regulate the dense physical body to an area where the soul has to regulate the astral body. And, you know, when we have our meditation, basically, that's what we're doing, you know. And, you know, you will recognize that soul energy is brought into the astral body. So this second battle, and, you know, basically, I think we're all struggling. To be a human being means to struggle. And DK has said, you know, see that you battle. He has said that. This second battle is the true Kurukshetra and is fought out on the astral nature between the pairs of opposites which are distinctive of our astral Buddhic solar system, just as the physical pairs of opposites are distinctive of the past solar system, which was a very, should we say, mental physical, and the soul aspect was not so prominent, nor was the emotional aspect. From one interesting angle, the battle of the opposites upon the lower spiral, in which the physical body in its two aspects is concerned, can be seen taking place in the animal kingdom. And I kind of told you, you know, that story, which was so interesting. I used to take walks with this disciple, and we, you know, she was an elderly person, and but she was first ray person, very first ray soul, and she really exerted discipline over everyone she contacted, including her well-trained dog. But there was a lesson in it for sure. In this process, with the animal kingdom, the human beings act as the agents of discipline, and the domesticated animals, you know, the higher types associated with human beings, just the way we are domestications of the masters and higher beings. So agents of discipline and the domesticated animals, which are forced to conform to human control, are wrestling, even if unconsciously, from our point of view, with the problem of the pairs of opposites. Their battle is fought out through the medium of the dense physical body and the etheric forces. So they're already beginning to work toward that initiation that they will one day take. as human beings in which they will gain control, not because they have an advisor saying, do this, because they gain control out of their own will, working through the etheric body, they gain control over the dense physical. Okay, and excuse me. Their battle is fought out through the medium of the dense physical body and the etheric forces, and in this way, a higher aspiration is brought into expression. This produces in them the experience which we call, eventually, see, individualization. Aspiration then is leading to individualization. A higher type of desire objective leads towards individualization, wherein the seed of personality is sown. I mean, just because a person is individualized from the animal kingdom does not mean that this individual is already a personality. Not yet. It takes a long time of developing the vehicles and integrating them before you reach the stage of a true personality. On the human battlefield, the Kurukshetra, the higher aspect of the soul begins to dominate. Maybe not so much the soul in incarnation, but Krishna, our charioteer. We begin to attend to his words and to his energies, producing the process of divine human integration, which we call initiation. So we ponder on this. Individualization for the animal is like initiation for the human being. Well, let's see. I think, okay. Maybe I'll just read one more paragraph. When an aspirant reaches that point in his evolution, wherein the control of the physical nature is an urgent necessity, he recapitulates in his own life this earlier battle with the lowest pairs of opposites, and begins to discipline his dense physical nature, and this does lead to the first initiation. Well, there's, yeah, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. This is where I was going to end, then I got ambitious, and I thought, oh, surely we will get to the next paragraph, but no, it didn't happen. And I don't want to talk overly much because it's important that you have a chance to ask and say a few things. So this is what we'll do the next time in 1 week or so. And, you know, like I say, the conference is coming up. Of course, I really would love to see you there in person, okay? But it will mean that during the conference, this kind of work cannot be done. So there'll be a few weeks in there where we will not be able to have this particular webinar and maybe the Science of Triangles webinar. As a matter of fact, we cut off during the conference our broadcasts and webinars because it's just so intensively demanding that there's no way to really do it without, you know, driving yourself quite crazy. So, but I'll let you know when that comes about. And for the time being, we're not yet at that point. All right. So let's see. All right. That's how far we are. And I think we're going to begin on page, we've made it to page 88, and we begin next time with page 89 or so. Well, maybe it's still 88. Hold on. Yeah, it is. We're still beginning on page 88. Sorry. And we have done a few pages. Okay. Now, friends, your thoughts about what we have covered between the lower pairs of opposites, the battle in the animal kingdom, the what can I call it, taking on again the same battle in the human kingdom, and how this leads to the first initiation, but how this is really related to energies which come from the first major solar system, and how once we begin to master the energies and not let the impulses of the body plus the available ethers run away with the show, so that we begin to commit things over which we have no control, that once there is control, we can begin the battle with our desire nature, which is more the true theme for our astral Buddhic solar system. And then, of course, you have to, I assume that discipleship is struggle. And DK really talks about that. We are struggling. And such is the nature of the middlemost kingdom, the human kingdom. Now, where is our struggle? Maybe as a younger person, we recapitulate the struggle between the etheric and the dense physical. Then later, the struggle is in the realm of desire. And perhaps if we keep going and moving towards the third initiation, the struggle will be between the soul located within the higher mind and our normal mental tendencies. Where is your struggle? That is something to be determined. And of course, if we don't have a struggle, we're not obeying the master on this point, who basically is saying, see that you battle, see that you struggle, okay? Because this is humanity's way of overcoming and progressing. Michael, I'll just bet that's you. Is that you?
Yes. Friedrich has written, the Kurukshetra energy is very important in the Mahabharata. Is there today in the reading part any connection with the Mahabharata?
The ancient battle to which the Mahabharata refers, I think took place, if Philip Lindsay's chronology is correctly, maybe 3 or 4 million years ago. And there was a film, that went on hours and hours about the Mahabharata, trying to give us an idea of who the characters were and what the stakes were. Actually, every time we mention the Battle of Kurukshetra, we're talking about that which is documented in the Mahabharata. But then we carry on with symbolism, and we transfer a battle on the plains south of Delhi, we're told, wherein there might have been even advanced weaponry used, such as some of the evidence. We transfer that to the battle that goes on within every true aspirant and disciple. And who knows what the battles are for the initiates. There's always going to be a battle. There will always be a struggle. Even the Christ, the Tibetan tells us, faced a struggle in the Garden of Gethsemane before he acquiesced to the divine will at what for him became the 6th initiation. So from that tangible and real battle between two aspects of the same family, I guess, there's a generalization to the life of the aspirant. And that's the way DK references it. He doesn't get into the details of it. Other books will do that. And you say there's an interesting book about this issue, The Battle Beyond Kurukshetra, a Mahabharata novel. Okay, that's, look, we're not going to escape struggle. Not on our fourth little planet, whose symbol is the cross, surrounded by the circle. The fourth ray is prominent here because of our position and our task as the kind of hospital of our solar system, or the place where these still very powerful tendencies of the previous major solar system are still working against the ideal tendencies of this second major solar system. Yeah, right. So exactly. Yeah, I agree with you here that we use different metaphors regarding different types of knowledge. But, you know, for us as historians, it might be very interesting to study the Mahabharata and maybe even to endure the film. I never have seen it all the way through, but what's really germane is the condition of struggle in which we find ourselves. If we don't have struggle as a human being, as a member of the fourth creative hierarchy, as a member of the fourth kingdom, then we're really not doing our job. We're giving into a condition of temporary peace, which is not the true and whole peace, which comes after winning through the struggle with which we are faced. See, this whole idea of energy, which expands into duality and then comes back to unity, and then into duality and then unity. Every time there is a separation into the duality, there is a struggle before the impending unity is again achieved. And then from every unity, a struggle must be generated, and that's how we ascend, at least while we are members of this particular kingdom. As for other kingdoms, there may be other ways of progressing, but what we understand is that even in their own initiatory method, the planetary logoi have their struggles, and I suppose there's a difference between a sacred and a non-sacred solar logos, and that implies struggle. We are in the solar system of a non-sacred solar logos. The system of Sirius, however it is composed, is a system of a sacred solar logos, and this is a higher analogy to sacred and non-sacred planets on our own lower level. So that's why DK basically said, see that you battle, because we have to know what is the next condition of energy patterning to be overcome or to be entered into.
Rebecca has hand raised for a while, and then Friedrich raised his hand.
Okay, I'll tell you what, let's, since we've been dealing with Friedrich's thoughts here, we'll have him speak first if you would like to, and then Rebecca. Okay, so Friedrich, go ahead if you would like to talk.
Yes, thank you for your inspiration today. So you mentioned about struggling, but maybe the struggling period could be very short if we have a very fast awareness. Because awareness could be like enlightenment, it could be very fast. So the struggling could be, of course, sometimes long, sometimes maybe several lives, but it could be short also.
Yes, it could be shortened. I think the more honest we are and the more courageous we are and the more willing to see what is within us, And the more willing we are to attempt to drop our projections in the psychological sense, where we see in the other person what's really in ourselves, the time equation will be seen to be in our hands. And it becomes possible to, what does DK say? Possible to accomplish in an hour or a very short time, a few short hours or an hour, what would normally take lifetimes to accomplish. And that's a huge scale if you think about it. So here's the key, as far as I'm concerned. The point of tension. How intense is the point of tension through which we carry on our struggle? Because basically, struggles are between lower and higher points of tension, which means, of course, he says, focused, immovable will. That's one of the ways he describes a point of tension. So if we're really capable of intensifying the point of tension to the point where it becomes extremely penetrative and goes beyond our present imprisonment, casting it aside, we can accomplish very much in a very short time. How will that point of tension be intensified? Well, I think it is through the power of deflecting the non-essential or the habitual. We are surrounded by habitual thoughts we have generated, even habitual environments, and we have to learn the Hindu system of rejecting the habitual and the customary. So what we say is not this, not that, not this, not that. It's the neti system, which will, if pursued rigorously, increase the point of tension and reveal new vibratory environments, which are altogether higher in the type of experience they offer us. And they also, if we can sustain them, they hold the phenomena of the lower point of tension at bay, and they no longer imprison us, those lower patterns of energy. So, it's something we can take on ourselves and improve, I believe.
Yes.
So
Thank you.
let's all be more tense in the right way.
So thank you for your comment. Is frustration can be part of struggling? Because frustration comes from outside.
Did you say frustration? Did you say
frustration? Yes.
Well, when we are not successful in the goal of our efforts, there will occur those energies that we recognize as frustration. But there comes the necessity for an analysis of how we are carrying on the intensification of our point of tension, and also the determination to persist no matter what type of external or internal frustrations occur, because with persistence in the right way, we will certainly succeed, and we have to believe in that as well. We cannot always be doubting the efficacy of our efforts. So frustration at length will be overcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you, Frederick. Now let's see. There was, before taking up what Chris is saying here,
Rebecca.
We had Rebecca. Okay, Rebecca, you're good. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Michael. Do we have time to keep going? It's already 1 hour and 9 minutes.
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
And that we can keep going for 5 hours if you'd like. But but I tell you the truth, I'm these days I'm doing my best to make these video commentaries on the externalization of the hierarchy. And I also have to use time during the day to do that. So as much as I'd love to continue for 5 more hours on this, probably it will not be the case. Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right. It's a very basic question, Michael. I'm just struggling to understand understand a definition of the pairs of opposites. And part B of that question is there a diagram, a visual diagram that I could access? I've been to Esoteric Healing, page 517, which shows one type of the pairs of opposites, but I'm understanding there are several types of pairs of opposites.
Well, every time we move up on the vibratory ladder, we are going to be confronted with the contrast between what a higher center of energy can produce in terms of consciousness and ability, and what a lower center of energy produces. Now, so in a way, the principle of opposition is constantly with us, because these neighboring centers of energy do conflict with each other. Every time we want to move into something higher, the tamasic aspect will try to pull us back. And then, you know, eventually we achieve some kind of rajasic or active relation between them, and finally a harmonious relation wherein the lower of the pairs of opposites becomes a subset of the one into which we are entering. It's just like example of the rays. There's a higher and lower part of every ray. He talks about this in connection with the fourth ray, particularly a part that is always struggling and a part that leads to harmony. The higher part of the personality ray, the lower part. And at first, they can be in conflict with each other and are. And then after mutual accommodation, the higher part gains control, not by suppression, but by assimilation and direction. And thereby you have achieved a harmonious relation. And you can draw that lower part, as it were, into the higher part. Now, you know, the obvious thing is, even more obvious, is the battle between the soul ray and the personality ray. At first, they are really going to struggle, and it can be for a number of lives. But then what happens is that the lower ray acquiesces and becomes a sub-ray harmoniously related to the higher ray, and that is the climax of the relationship, and then transmission can occur and the utilization of the lower by the higher occurs. So, in short, there will be certain types of pairs of opposites that are well known. They are found in every vehicle, and they are found particularly in the threefold constitution of the human being: personality, soul, and then that's resolved, and then monad and personality, soul become the pairs of opposites. And then I wouldn't be surprised if after the monad absorbs all that the planetary logos itself and its will becomes a higher of the pairs of opposites, which must make accommodation with the monad, and on until there's a final resolution of the ultimate duality in a universal sense, and the universal God gives up duality, reabsorbs every emanation, and becomes completely reunified in oneness. So, you know, I think it's a universal process, and I think it keeps on going. But there are, for our purposes, pairs of opposites which are more germane at the moment. Like right now, most of us are not fighting a pair of opposites that involves the monad triad versus the soul-infused personality. Mostly not. But we are in the battle between the soul and the integrated personality, and we call that the dweller and the angel. And that's the one to resolve. That's the one to resolve. Yeah. Oh, do we know what it will take? Okay, is that okay then, Rebecca, or was there more?
Oh, it's just very interesting that the other contemplation I've been asking myself is, what is the difference between the solar angel and the angel of the presence? But we'll get to that some other time.
Well, let me give you a definition as I see it. Okay, the solar angel is a vast being, trained on Sirius, was a human being in the previous solar system, and its natural home is on the cosmic astral plane. It falls onto the cosmic etheric plane. It takes up a position there, probably on the Buddhic plane, is what we seem to be told. Show you what I mean here. Takes up a position here. I'll get this. 1, 2, 3. Hope I can find it. And there it is. Here it is. Solar angels, Buddhic plane. Okay. Agnishvata's Buddhic plane. Okay. So these are the cosmic ethers, and somewhere the solar angel, when it returns from its training, it takes up a position whereby it can serve, through which it can serve. Now comes the interesting thing. Maybe the solar angel per se descends no lower than the cosmic ethers, but, and here's where the ancient mantram comes in, having pervaded the entire universe with a fragment of myself, I remain. And now projects into the higher mental plane, and the matter of the higher mental plane, a portion of its presence. Now, you know, who knows how these things are measured out, but let's just say it is able to split its presence and be conscious in an aspect of itself on the higher mental plane, builds the egoic lotus, and remains there as the angel of the presence. So the way I see it, temporarily until I'm corrected, you know, or find that I'm incorrect, is that the angel of the presence is in fact a portion of the solar angel, which is projected into the dense physical body of the planetary logos on the higher mental plane, builds the causal body, builds the lotus, remains there, and introduces at length the man to his own monad when the time comes. Thus, the angel of the presence, because the monad is the presence. I hope I'm being, you know, somewhat clear.
That is spectacular. Thank you. That is so much to
think about. It's something to think about. You know, a projection of the solar angel, and a diminution. Because if the solar angel, in its entirety, tried to substand this vehicle, the vehicle couldn't take it, you see. The solar angel is just too powerful to be entirely present. And remember what he says, a humorous thing. He says, look, stop importuning your soul all the time. It has its own things to do on the higher planes. So people are always, you know, soul this, soul that, and it is a downward gazing soul, and it does, in a sense, supervise the upcoming, evolving would-be initiate and so forth. But it also has to be left to pursue its own activities on the higher planes. As far as the angel of the presence is concerned, it blends. Now, this is very important. This, you know, as long as I'm having a chance to say this, it blends with that portion of consciousness which comes from the monad and also takes up its place on the higher mental plane. So the egoic consciousness here is a blend of our own monadic awareness, much reduced, of course, and what the solar angel projects into that. They blend together, and that is what we have in terms of egoic consciousness on the higher mental plane. So we, the monad, are still involved in this process. And the solar angel has a different monad, but in a way that's false because there's only one monad in all of cosmos. But you know, there are apparent differentiations, and it's a different monadic sphere through which the solar angel works than through which the man works, but their projections blend here at the heart of the lotus and provide us with our higher consciousness. Okay.
Thank you so much, Michael. And thank you so much for all of these webinars.
Yeah, you
we
bet.
must never take this for granted. Thank you.
You're very kind. And
Deeply.
you know, I offer you and everybody what my best thought of the moment is, always realizing that you know, I may be incorrect, and if I'm corrected, I hope I make the corrections, you know, because the Tibetan has given us a lot, you know. Okay, thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you so much.
You bet, you bet. Now, Chris, I've got.
Right.
I'm looking right at it.
Do we know what it will take for our solar logos to become sacred?
Yes, he has to get sufficiently frustrated. Wait a second. No, that's a different one. Hold on. All right. Yes, I think we do. The level 5 in a cosmic sense is the level of sacredness. Now, in a sense, Sirius is a sacred solar logos, or on its way to becoming fully that. My impression about Sirius, it's a solar logos who has taken the 3rd initiation. But the number 5 leads us into sacredness. Now, what is given in cosmic fire is that our solar logos, depending on how successful it is, will take either the 4th or the 5th initiation in this solar system. And much of this will depend upon also the progress of the Earth, because you cannot take the 5th initiation unless the base of the spine center is in a certain effective condition. So we on Earth have a long way to go, because we are the base of the spine center of the solar logos. So if the solar logos's efforts and achievements are balanced by our own efforts and achievements in the approximately 150 trillion years left, well, you know, I don't want to get into those cycles, but it's a long, long time. Then a 5th initiation can be taken in our solar system, and that will be the sacredness of our solar logos, the complete sacredness of our solar logos. Just like a man, you take the 3rd initiation, it's the beginning of the track to sacredness, which more fully occurs at mastership. So when a solar logos becomes a master solar logos, that is the real sacredness. And if it doesn't occur in this solar system, either because of the failure of the solar logos in his own right, or because the Earth was not ready to support the relationship between will and purpose, base of the spine and top of the head, then it will occur in the beginning of the very next solar system, which is the 3rd major and 6th sequential solar system. It will take many, many years. What is the status of our solar logos right now? He is a cosmic initiate of the 2nd degree, and he is sponsoring or underlying an astral Buddhic solar system. He's on his way to dealing with cosmic mind in the same way that Sirius has dealt with cosmic mind and succeeded. No evil can occur in the sunshine of the major sun. The major sun for us is Sirius, a third-degree initiate minimally in the sense of cosmic mind, and we are on our way to achieve that. But that will not be the height of sacredness, and even beyond mastership, there's some interesting possibilities regarding 6th and 7th degrees, just as there are for the human being. So in summary, a long time from now, the Solar Logos will have to go through the 3rd and 4th cosmic initiations, and then depending on his relationship with the Earth and our planetary Logos' relationship with him, maybe the 5th of sacredness can be taken in our solar system, and maybe it will have to wait until the next solar system. DK does discuss the 6th initiation in the next solar system, the 6th for our solar Logos. And I just want to introduce a very, a kind of a funny thought. You know how a master can create a Maya Virupa, a will-created body, and then make it disappear, or emerge again and disappear, because of his control of the phenomena of light. Well, what happens if you have a master or a Chohan on the solar logoic level? Can the next star that appears be an analog to the Maya Virupa, appearing and disappearing at will? And there are some stellar phenomena that would make you think that might happen. And perhaps that's the reason why it has been estimated that stars like the Pleiades last a very short time. But who knows whether they appear and disappear in a Maya Virupa-like manner. It's just, look, what all it is using the law of analogy and the law of correspondences to speculate about the life of beings that are completely transcendental to us, but something of the analogy might hold. Okay. Okay, so that was the answer to that one, Chris, as far as I can get it or understand it. And let's see, Michael, is there anything else before we do our meditation?
Friedrich went on to write, frustration is from the environment world. The angels handle the struggling issues question. And then gratitude and blessings for this teaching and inspiration.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I kind of dealt with that, there's all kinds of different frustration. Some frustration is simply a blockage from within one's own nature or from the environment. And, here's an example. I've been reading a lot about World War II. I just get this feeling I really participated in that. And I'm seeing how the German armies tried to cross the Russian plains to capture Moscow. And they didn't succeed because the rains of October came in and they were in a sea of mud. So their plans were frustrated by an outer obstacle. Good thing for everybody, that was so. And they had to wait until the next year before they could mount another attack. So just the circumstances themselves held them fast in the mud and they could not progress. An outer blockage, okay, which worked for the welfare of humanity, thank goodness. But there's another kind of frustration, and that's when a higher being altogether enters the sphere of a lower being with good intention, but causes at first a disturbance which disorganizes the approach of the lower being. Now, that is a kind of frustration leading to a greater type of organization and greater type of progress. And its cause is completely different. I might say that if a master were to walk in our room, let's just say the way it happened with Alice Bailey that Sunday morning when everyone else was at church, and said, okay, we've got some plans that you can help with. If you will, then our previous plans would no longer be operative. They would be blocked in a way or disorganized and have to be reorganized. And if we remain identified with our previous plans, we would find that this is frustrating. But if we give assent to the new possibility, then that disorganization of our previous plans becomes a great opportunity. Now, back to the Garden of Gethsemane, we were told that Christ, told by the Tibetan that Christ had worked out his own method for bringing saviorship to humanity, because after all, he was the head of the spiritual hierarchy at that time. Interesting. He for 2,500 years, even from the time the Buddha achieved his enlightenment and went on to other things, had his sixth initiation, the Christ was the head of the hierarchy. He had a method, but that method had to be set aside. Its imperfections were seen. He no longer gave it the attention that he had before, and he acquiesced in an entirely new pattern, which in a way, was the blocking out of his own previous method. So that is a beneficent type of frustration induced from a higher agency altogether. And I think we have to keep that in mind. When a master enters the disciple's life, the life pattern is going to be disorganized. And we can welcome that, or we can hang on to what we had before. The element of frustration is involved in both ways, but with different effects. Okay, that's a little more on that. Okay, well then I think we're ready. I think we're ready then we'll meditate together. And I've said, I've come back to some of these words. They're circling words, lying, personality, egotism, all these glamours surrounding not knowing who we are, thinking we're something that we are not. These glamours circle around and make the personal individual too large within his field of consciousness. So we might call them, in a way, glamours of self-importance. When we know that we must become the relinquished point, which means that any form of lower ego is out of the way in our perception of truth. So maybe we should call it that, egotism, self-importance. We see it in the world today. Perhaps it gives these people the energy to do what they do, but it is a distortion. It's certainly related to the glamour of personality, and it runs counter to the Tibetan's advice, take your eyes off the little personal self. And that old statement, rule out the good self and the bad self, and let only Christ be seen and heard. I think I'm pretty close to the quote there. Just look up rule out, and you will find what he says about being preoccupied. I'm so good or I'm so bad. Let only the Christ, the law of love, the law of unity, be seen and heard. Okay. Now, let's see where I am here. Yeah. So we'll use that. Egotism and self-importance. Of course, it's if a person would study, I keep on having an intuition here that if a person would study the mathematics of the infinite and of the infinitesimal, this problem could be solved. But of course, you know, it's kind of a advanced study, and maybe types that are on the third ray might undertake such a study, but it might not appeal to others. Suffice it to say that as an ego, or as anything separate, we are really next to nothing. Or I could better say, next to no thing. So we have to minimize our importance, and yet maximize it by realizing that there's no difference between the universal logos and what we are. Now, you know, these kinds of things seem preposterous to those who are not involved in esoteric thought, but once you get into the wisdom teaching of the ages, you are led down strange paths, or they appear to be strange when the average mentality thinks about them. But we have to have the willingness to see where those paths may lead. And sometimes, you know, it's very, very surprising, the conclusions to which you come. Okay. So that's what our work will be on today. And got to get my pitch pipe here, you know, to make sure we're on the right note. I've written some articles on music and esotericism. If you're interested, I can send them to you. And the whole universe is music, you know. And that's really what Pythagoras understood. And there are laws of harmony and laws of dissonance, and the musical analysis can reveal a lot. So I try to use this note G, a blue note, quite a bit when it comes to the soul. Okay. So let's be, wait a second. Okay, I've got you, and Veronica. Okay. Just one moment. So we'll gather ourselves together in the silence. First, as many of us as there are, we are in the silence together. And the sense of us being one group is strong upon us. And any sense of divisions, you know, fade away. And we're gathered here at a point of tension as one consciousness to continue to do a piece of work under the instruction of Master DK, to clarify the lower subplanes, and especially at this point, the astral world, home to so many glamours which afflict humanity. It's just wrong desire, really. Desire based on false assumptions, and desire which really leads nowhere good. So let's use the protective formula with the long-armed cross and the eyes, and visualize light with each stroke. A lighted cross finally will be created. As a soul, I work in light, and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light. I work, and from that point, I never move. And with each one of us, there is this lighted cross, and representing the entire group, this large lighted cross of protection, which will not allow us to descend into the glamorous field and be affected by it. We will affect it. It will not affect us. And when dealing with glamour, never think that you should do it or could do it unprotected. It's just too strong. Now we're bringing the lights together. We raise the light of matter from the lower parts of the personality, especially the etheric light. But we gather light from below as vitality and focus it upon the plane of lower mind. And we become aware of the light of logic, reason, clear thought. We can wield that type of light, and we blend it with the vital personal light from below. Two lights are one. So that would make us capable of vigorous and sustained thinking in the normal sense. And we think about soul light as if we locate it somewhat above the head, perhaps, as a real thing, bringing revelation that cannot be had within the personality per se, and we bring the soul light imaginatively onto the lower mental plane, is probably the fourth subplane we're working with here, and blend the light of the soul with its revelation of the truth, of the beautiful, and of the good. We blend the light of the soul with the other two lights. Now we have a triple light, seen as one. And from this light, our searchlight will be generated. Our searchlight, which will imaginatively shine within and upon the astral plane and will both reveal what must be destroyed, or at least weakened, and will take part as a weapon in the weakening and eventual destruction of the barriers. And so then we say together, followed by the sacred word, the light is one, and in that light shall we see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. In our imagination, we want our work with light to become brighter and brighter and more real to us. We go forward to the formula, and as we think of the words of these formulas and maybe say them out loud, we visualize that great searchlight that we have created, and it turns its light upon the astral plane. Radiance are we and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth. The inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus, with the light we work and turn the darkness into day. Now we're going to strengthen our beam with the application of spiritual will, derived from the higher parts of our nature. This will that the purpose of the planetary logos will be achieved. And we say, with power upon its beam, the light is focused on the goal. And our goal, of course, is to weaken, to dissipate this glamour of egotism, of unwarranted self-importance. It's really, finally, a lack of proportion, which is just the opposite of humility, which is an adjusted sense of right proportion. We think for a moment of what has happened in the world as the result of the presence of egotism, derived from the illusion of egoism. What has happened? Because human beings are subject to egotism and to inflated self-importance. And I think we will see that it, militates against so many of the values which have to emerge during the Aquarian age, the group age, because it centralizes authority in one individual, probably in an unwarranted manner. And it takes away from true cooperation, true group love and group spirit. It is not a desirable state. It's a great limitation, in fact. So, with some idea of the loss to humanity which has come from egotism and from unwarranted self-importance, we utter these words of power. And as we do so, we visualize the light penetrating into the glamour and producing a weakening and dissipation. The power of our united light prevents the appearance of the glamour of egotism, of unwarranted self-importance. The power of our united light negates the quality of this glamour from affecting humanity. The power of our united light destroys the life behind this glamour. Now, in your own way and for 5 minutes, we'll have silence and intensity of purpose, and you can see the work proceeding. This is a very stubborn glamour, and it arises because the majority of human beings are members of the fourth kingdom and have not yet made the transition into the fifth kingdom, the kingdom of souls. It has to do astrologically with Leo and Libra, the sun of egotism and of inflated self-importance falls in the sign of proportion, which is Libra. That fall is what we aim for. That's what we need. And it's called an adjusted sense of right proportion. It is true humility. So we question ourselves. Do we have our eyes upon our personal little self, or have we succeeded in taking our eyes off our personal little self? And have we achieved in Leo what is called the relinquished point? And can an adjusted sense of right proportion, which is humility, rule our interaction with our fellow human beings? This is something that we have to see to. And it will allow us to give everything then to the divine plan and purpose. So we'll close this little meditation with the Om sounded 3 times as we imagine a clearing occurring from the mental to the emotional to the etheric physical plane. And the truth of the higher worlds descending into those lower planes. And eventually the higher planes, which we consider the planes of our destined spirituality, will infuse the lower planes and subplanes on which we habitually live, and will help make that more possible for humanity as a whole. Thank you, everyone. Tomorrow morning we'll have the work on the soul, a broadcast with readings from the destiny of the nations, and on Sunday morning the attraction of money for hierarchical purposes. Let's just keep on keeping on, as they say in the arcane school, you know. Keep on keeping on, and for those who persist in the right way, the victory will be theirs. Okay, many blessings, lots of love, and we'll see you before long on the next occasion. Bye-bye.